Welcome back. When Rinsola Abiola joins us in this next leg of our conversation. She's the acting president of APC Young Women Forum. Maureen, and thank you for joining us today. Already, some have expectation or have an idea of what to expect when the minister nominees appear before the Senate for screening. Well, a lot has been going on lately. First about the persons who were nominated, the politics of their emergence, and maybe before they even appear. You also have heard about all of this. What's your impression of, first and foremost, those who have emerged?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Personally, as a member of the party, and then, of course, somebody who contributed a lot during the campaign process, I must say that it's a good thing that leaders, some of whom are mentors and role models to most of us, have been recognized and have been nominated to take up ministerial portfolios. Governor Rotimi Amechi, his contributions cannot be overstated. Governor Fashola, okay, Barrister Fashola, I can't call him governor anymore. We have Hajia Aisha Jumai Al-Hassan, who contested in Taraba, Dr. Amina Mohammed. There are so many of them. Chief Aljobe, who is very sound, has a lot of ideas, and personally I believe he was born before his time. So for me, I think it's a good thing, really. These are people that we respect, people that we look up to, and personally I believe they will do well.
Isn't there a but to all of this? Yesterday we had a talk and we were looking at a list specifically, and we just had another chat with Professor Christopher Ogbogbo looking at what obtains in other parts of the world. We realize that there is a trend that is on constant repetition in the country, and that has to do with certain names that you will always see whenever you go back in history and you come back to the present, you see them as a constant. Aren't you worried, even though you're a member of the APC?
Well, for instance, on social media, there have been lots of comments about youth inclusion, for instance. It is a valid concern, actually, because we've heard some of these names before, and it seems like nothing is really moving forward in terms of in terms of handing over to the next generation. And I would like to say personally that the fact that those who have been nominated contributed a lot to the victory of the APC should also favor the young people. It should count in our favor because our campaign was essentially youth-driven. So personally, and I believe that I do represent the views of many youths within the party, we have faith in the president's ability to ensure representation for all constituencies, and that includes women, that includes youths, that includes everybody who contributed in one way or the other. So the nominations haven't been done yet. We're not through with nominations. There have been just about 19 names so far. So I believe, and not just me now, that perhaps subsequently in the next list and in the next series of appointments to come, there will be more youth representation, there will be more youth inclusion. Youth inclusion was one of the reasons why we came together in the first place to have youth support groups and forums for the APC. And now I'm not really speaking for the party or anything, but after we did win elections, the party made a very, very good move by appointing 3 youth representatives to the Board of Trustees. I am one of them. So is Ismail Ahmed and Jasper Azutalam. So I want to believe that the party has taken that first step. And although representation with the party is not the same thing as with government, I believe also that the government will do the same.
Let's be much more specific. If and when the next batch of nominees emerge and you don't have younger persons or making that list, or more women making the list, how would you feel?
I wouldn't feel very good about it, and that's because if we go back in history, like Professor Ogbogbo said, we had young people in their 20s holding key offices and contributing a lot to development. So age should count against us. And then also, I would want for people to understand that when we talk about youth inclusion, we're not asking for appointments based on age alone. It's like when women talk about affirmative action, it's not just based on gender alone. But the thing is, there are qualified young people who have the required qualifications to hold offices. So in this case, I believe amongst us, for instance, I will always refer to Ismail. I would mention an Akinwunyebode. We have young people within the youth movement who can actually hold solid portfolios. And then, of course, we should also remember, though, that there are lots of appointments to come, and it's not just the ministerial, but then we want inclusion at all levels. And as I said earlier, I believe personally that the president will ensure adequate representation for all of us. Because youth inclusion was one of the premises on which our campaign was based. And even this first list, a lot of calls have been coming in from our friends and colleagues in civil society, some of those we campaigned to back home, and they were like, you guys did all this campaigning, there are no young people on this list. So what I have said so far is, let's wait to see the concluding list. My faith in President Muhammadu Buhari is unshakable, personally. And I know that he is a fair person. He believes in leading with justice and equity. Therefore, young people should not, and most importantly, will not be left out. I just have that faith.
But you know that they say you don't have a second opportunity of making a first impression. Having seen this list, people will think that if the second batch comes forward and you have young people, they'll think maybe an afterthought, that it wasn't their intention in the first place.
I don't see it that way. I don't think it's about an afterthought. He didn't send all the names of nominees at once. That's simply what it is. So it's not like youth inclusion is an afterthought, so to speak. We'll have to wait to see the list before we know the appropriate reactions to have to it. It happens all the time. Things won't always happen at once. We've been asking for youth inclusion. For instance, the party has taken the first step with the inclusion of young people in the BOT, and then we can look for other things. The APY, for instance, which Ismail heads, we've spoken with our key people in government, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. We want youth inclusion at all levels, and it's not just about the presidency or the ministerial appointments, even down to the state level. We want youth inclusion because we need for the next generation of leaders to be effectively mentored, so we know what to do when we get to office.
Have you seen enough indication across board that this government will drive youth inclusion and institutionalize it?
I believe so. I'll make an example with some of the visits I said we had earlier to the Senate Presidents, the Speaker, House of Reps. We talked to them about the need to have youth inclusion across board. For instance, in the National Assembly, I'll go into some of the issues bedeviling the youth sector. We have bodies like the National Association of Nigerian Students, the National Youth Council of Nigeria, that have leadership crisis and are really representative. So if we need to sort all these issues out, we need to have youth liaison officers, for instance, at the National Assembly. So we discussed all those things with them, and they've been very receptive so far. The presidency, anyone who was active during the Buhari campaign can attest to the fact that young people played a very important role. We had youths volunteering, even with their own resources on their own time, going from house to house, doing door-to-door campaigns. And in Abuja here, I was on the Presidential Campaign Committee, the Youth Mobilization Committee of the PCC. And I recall all the roadwalks we had, traveling to other states. And the reception from young people was very good. So, as I said earlier, the president is a man of his word. If there's one thing we know about President Muhammadu Buhari, it is that he is a man of integrity, a man who speaks the truth. And I believe, again, once more, that he will do everything to ensure adequate representation for all of us. It's a demand we're making.